Hello everybody, welcome back to the Optimal Physique Development Podcast with myself, Jeffery, and my co-host, whatever it is, Batman himself, Austin Stout of the USA. We've got a cool guest on today, so we're going to roll into that interview in a bit, but before we get into that, Austin, how you doing, man? What you been up to?
Doing all right, same old stuff. Days are pretty busy. That's good though. It keeping me occupied. Everything, like, days are just flying by. Like, I need more time in the day, but I'd rather that than not have anything to do. So
for sure, man. Definitely in prep, it keeps your mind off eating, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, and not only that, it just keeps your mind off the way you feel.
Yeah,
that helps.
Yeah, man. I like the new videos and stuff that you're putting on, and some more detail on what you're doing in your prep, and a lot of people seem to like that, so keep that up for sure.
Yeah, just little snippets, so I don't really have anyone bother me outside now. I can take as many videos as I want.
Yeah, that's the good thing about being in your own gym, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, the only downside of it at this point is that it's so hot. Like, I literally thought I was going to black out and throw up yesterday because it was so hot in there. And I was doing bent over rows, and I stood up and like lights went out, just seeing stars. I was like, oh God, I'm going down.
Yeah. Oh, it's freezing in my gym at the minute, which is how I like it, because I can train in a vest, a t-shirt, and then a hoodie, Yeah,
I would definitely rather have it that way, but, I'll deal with it. I'm sure I'll adapt. I just got to keep drink plenty of fluids and stuff. I went through probably a half a gallon of fluid in my workout yesterday. I mean, I was just literally dumping sweat. It's like what I picture training with Branch Warren at Metroflex would be like.
It's funny as that, because I never, ever sweat when I train for some reason, no matter how hard I train. But for the last week, every session, I've been like dripping with sweat. I don't know whether it's the trenbolone kicking in, or whether it's this new training programming, or what. But I've been like finishing the workout and realizing that I'm drenched, and it's very unusual for me. So I'm not sure. I've also just been sweating whilst I'm eating, like really bad, and I never get like that either. Especially like, I ate my post-workout meal yesterday, and I was covered. I was just sweating. I was like, what is going on?
It is odd, because I don't think you're necessarily you're holding. I mean, you hold water anyhow, but I don't think you're holding any more than you normally would.
No. Well, I've never held this much fluid around the midsection, but for some reason my legs have stayed pretty clear this time, whereas last time my legs were pretty waterlogged. It's very, very strange things going on this gaining phase, but it's cool that I'm gaining weight really fast, as you know, even on some fairly minimal calories, and I'm looking bloated and bloofy as hell, but 100% it is just a fluid retention issue. Even I had a dressing gown on last night, and when I went to bed, I took the dressing gown off, and you could see an indent of where the tie had been around my waist. I've never had something like that. I was like, what the fuck? Like, it's bad fluid retention around the midsection at the minute. But, it's all good. It's all free and goal. I'm quite happy to keep pushing weight up and get to heavier weight than I've ever been, and just hold it there for a little while,
Yeah. Well, and like we said, it's one of those things where we just have to keep in mind that we know that if we're not increasing calories, you're not getting fat.
Yeah.
So that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's physiologically, it's going to be nearly impossible unless we're just keep increasing calories, that you're gaining tons and tons of body fat. So we know that what you're gaining isn't most of it's not body fat, at least.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, my blood glucose is still really good, and my pumps in the gym are just ridiculously big at the minute. So it's not like my nutrient partitioning's completely off. So something must be happening. And like we were speaking about yesterday, I took my t-shirt off in the gym, and I was down to the vest, and these two blokes were like, oh my God, how have you got so lean in the past 2 weeks? I'm thinking, I've gained about 20 pounds. It's just how vascular, for some reason, I am at the minute is crazy. Like, my arms look shredded. Yeah. I'm like, I'm glad you can't see my abs.
Yeah. did you see what I responded? I'm like, that's because you have your shirt on.
Yeah. If they'd seen the rest of me, they wouldn't think I was so lean. The guys, I said to him, no, I've got a bit fat these last couple of weeks. He goes, fat, whilst you've still got veins like that, you got to keep bulking. He was going, just keep bulking this time, because you've always been really lean. I was thinking, are we talking about the same person? I've never been that lean. You know. Yeah, as is the talk in gyms, and why it's so good that you've got your space to yourself, man.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, it does get kind of tough. Like, I didn't realize how much different the environment would be when you're completely by yourself, and you just, I mean, it's already like a point in prep where there's plenty of days where you just like, I literally feel like I can't train, and but it's different when you have to drive to the gym and there's other people there around you. It's not like you're there to impress them necessarily, but you also don't want to be that guy that's like moping around and doing nothing at the gym. Whereas when you're at your house, it's really hot outside, you're really tired, there's nobody around. Like, I feel like you
could just slump into your front room. Yeah,
well, yeah, you're right. I feel like I could just take a nap instead, but I will probably, by the end of this prep, I'll probably have talked to myself more in the last 6 weeks than I have in my life, so I'll be mildly schizophrenic by the end of the prep.
Yeah, I can see you on stage talking to yourself about hitting poses. Open the scapula,
yeah.
Austin.
It's in the damn gym. It's like, man, I have to get myself so hyped up to do my working sets. Jesus, but hey, it's par for the course.
I really try not to hype myself up for my working sets as much as I can. Otherwise, I get like overly stimulated. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I try to just go into it relaxed and just push efficiently. Otherwise, I'll do some silly stuff.
I do that for the most part. I think where my training will probably end up as I go is I'll pretty much leave in like one quote unquote heavy movement, because I want that neurological response where my body feels that heavy weight in its hands, so if I'm doing that, I'm going to leave in heavy barbell rows or something, or leave in squat or something. But realistically, my nervous system's not going to be able to handle me doing like 4 massive compound movements per body part in the same workout. I just can't. Like, my body just won't recover, not muscularly or CNS wise. So
yeah.
That's kind of where, and that's kind of what I did last prep too, is I just left in one movement per workout. That was kind of my benchmark, that that at least tried to maintain that, get as close as I could to maintaining that strength point. And then my accessory work is where I accumulated the volume and stuff. And then obviously keeping enough volume in there where I'm still at least burning some calories and stuff, and providing nutrients and blood and stuff to the tissue.
It's that difficult balance between maintaining tension and load, which, according to the sort of rough level of research we have on it, is the most important variable. But then I'm still fully convinced that there is a need for keeping up volume markers on harsh deficits, especially as you said, even just for caloric burn, even though resistance training is such a shit ineffective way of burning calories. I still think we're going to learn something about the place of volume in a calorie deficit somewhere down the line.
Yeah, well, and I know a lot of people say, and I tend to agree, is that you shouldn't use your workouts as a means to burning fat. You know what I mean? Because that shouldn't be your primary caloric expenditure, which I agree, because it's not, like you said, it's not really a great way to burn calories anyhow. But at the same time, if you're somebody like me that's in such a tight deficit where everything, I'm already eating super low calories, cardio's already going up. If I'm just moping around and I cut my training volume in half, it's probably going to kick me right out of a deficit.
Yeah.
Because I can't afford to lose that minute detail. So all of that stuff all that stuff definitely matters at a point. So yeah, and like I told you, I bumped up to 5 days. I've been doing that a while from 4, and I don't know, might go up to 6 if I can handle it. We'll see. I mean, I've done up to 7 before in a prep, but it's just by feel. I mean, there's points where I'd rather just do more cardio than do more training. It just kind of depends on everything in context, I guess.
Yeah, no, completely agree, man. Completely agree.
So we'll see.
Cool.
Oh, and by the way, we dropped it back down to trace fats again this morning. So that's where back to that.
Back to the like 4 cod liver oils a day, and that's it.
Yeah, it is. Let's see. It's 1,610 calories on training days.
Yeah, that's low.
And then non-training days would be 1,370.
Yeah, that's some poverty macros, man.
That is low, and that's I still have 6 weeks as of Saturday, so this should get fun.
Yeah, but you're probably going to be the most dug out guy on there, so nothing to worry about.
I fucking better be. I don't start. I mean, it's funny because I post the little updates and stuff, and you always get people that ask like, "Oh my God, why are your calories so low?" I'm like, because I need to lose fat and I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
What kind of question is that? Why are you doing so much HIIT cardio? I'm like, because I have to get leaner. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
You see that comment? It's always something like, well, I competed last year and my calories didn't get under 2,000. It's like, okay, yours didn't.
Sure.
I'm not you, and maybe you didn't get into true condition, and
Yeah, so I mean, to me at a point, it's like if you're gonna do it, just do it right and do whatever it takes.
Yeah, do what you need to do. Do what you need to do.
Relevant, again, relevant to the person, but yeah.
Same thing to the other side as well. It's like in your gaining phase, like do what you need to do there as well. If you have to push calories, like we were talking about before, and get a little bit fat and watery, then you do what you need to do.
Yep, and those are the people that make consistent progress over the years, and those are the people that they're consistently a little better each contest. Like I don't even care how good somebody looks. If you're 260 on stage and you're a pro and you don't need to gain any more muscle, that's great. Okay, I understand that you're not going to come in heavier every year. But if you're not, like outside of that, if you're stepping on stage at the same exact weight for, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row, like even if you look good, like that's just not impressive to me because you haven't made any fucking progress.
Yeah.
Unless you're like, we're just fat before and you're lean now, but outside of that, I mean, that's just not impressive. Kind of like the female reference I made later in the episode. I don't know. People like, oh my gosh, his physique's so good. I'm like, yeah, I mean it is, but he's never gets any better. What's the point? It's bodybuilding. Physique enhancement, not just physique stay the same.
Maintenance, yeah.
Why? Like, what's the point? It's not like they're collecting a paycheck. I don't understand any enjoyment in that. I mean, you do all this hard stuff and for basically no reward other than just collecting trophies, I guess, if that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's got to get dirty at times, man. On both sides of the scale. You're going to have to push the food, and you're going to have to pull the food. You're going to have to look a bit fat, and you're going to have to look emaciated. If you're going to maximize both ends of the phases, yeah, for sure.
I got a comment the other day at the grocery store. I ran into someone that I know, and I see them I see them here and there, so it's not like they never see me, but they're like, man, your face looks really skinny. I'm like, sweet. I'm like, perfect. I'm getting there now.
Yes.
my shit, I didn't notice it this morning when I got up. I'm like, oh yeah, my cheeks are really sinking in now. My cheekbones are starting to pop out. I said, things are getting serious.
Did you watch the New York Pro this year? On a completely different note, did you notice that although, I mean, it wasn't the best conditioning at shows I've seen, but some of the guys were truly in good condition, although Nathan did really top it at the next show. But you notice that none of those guys have a really sunken in face, although they are really shredded.
Yeah, it is interesting. There's very few of them. I think Kevin Jordan's about the only one with like the crazy Skeletor face, but I think that's just because his cheekbones have grown so much.
Yeah, but when you look at like the 90s Olympia stage, like everybody had those weird faces. I don't know what, like, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know if I'm just making it up, but
yeah, you're right. There wasn't a lot of them. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting observation. I think that plus the lighting at the New York Pro fucking was terrible. Everybody
so bad.
looked
like a children's play.
It was stupid. I can't understand how such a prestigious show. I mean, outside of the Olympia and the Arnold, that's probably the third most prestigious pro show. It's always been. It used to be the Night of Champions, I think, is what it was. And I don't understand how you could have such bad lighting at a professional event. But
yeah.
I don't know the semantics of all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's dig into our interview with Allison then, man. It was really good. So, yeah, do you want to introduce Allison, Austin?
Yeah. So today we had on Allison Fahrenbach, and I think I said it right. She's an IPE figure pro here in the U.S. And she's going to talk to us about some female-specific topics, and you guys will hear about all that once we get into the interview. One of the reasons I want to have her on is, well, one, we haven't done. I don't even know if we've done anything female-specific on this show, have we?
No.
Okay. So female-specific stuff, and also it's mostly geared towards natural athletes, which I'm sure you would agree, a natural female athlete's kind of a whole different animal in and of itself, just because there's just a lot of obstacles to work around at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, for sure.
People should enjoy this.
Yeah. Okay, guys, enjoy.
All right, today we have on Allison Fahrenbach. Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
right?
Got it.
Okay, good. I got it. She's an IPE figure pro here in the U.S. We wanted to have her on today to talk about some female-specific topics. We didn't really have a specific topic in mind, but we were chatting a little bit before the show. We kind of got into some contest prep stuff, and I think that's going to be a really good topic here. We're talking about just metabolic adaptions. We can go into some stuff that's specific for females, maybe solve or debunk some of the myths about length of prep, whether long is good or short is good or when each is good, metabolic adaptions, how low calories can go, when they should go low, and so on and so forth. So before we get into any of that stuff, Allison, go ahead and introduce yourself, your background, how you got into competing, and then also, what you do as a coach and how you got into this industry specifically.
Okay, so I'll handle the competitive aspect of it first. So I've been competing for 14 years. That sounds so like, oh my gosh. I did my first show when I was 20. I started in the NPC, and I competed in the NPC for about 8 years, I think. And I did fairly well. But I ended up leaving the NPC and switching to the natural federations because being a natural athlete, I was pretty much told by a judge that I was at the point in my career where unless I did X, Y, and Z in terms of PEDs, I was going to be hard pressed to get my pro card. So I switched to the natural organizations. I did 2 shows in 2015, won my pro card, the figure overall, and the figure open out of 34 girls. In 2015, I won my pro card, and then I've been competing as a natural pro ever since. And in terms of coaching, I started coaching back maybe like 2006, 2007, kind of like just on the side. At the time, I was the manager, director of personal training at a local gym. And it didn't take me that long to realize that I really enjoyed the coaching aspect of it, coaching online, and it was something that I wanted to do full time. At that time, the market was not nearly as saturated as it is right now. Online training was like virtually unheard of. I remember when I told my parents I was an online trainer, they were like, "What? You do what?" Like they couldn't even like wrap their heads around it. But in 2008, I quit my job and I officially started coaching online full time. And I've been a full-time online coach ever since. I do own my own gym in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is where I live. And I do take very limited in-person clientele, but the vast majority of what I do is online training.
You know, it's funny because that backstory is nearly identical to mine. I was the director of PT, realized I didn't really like it, and I loved online training, but there was no social, I mean, there was some social media, but it was more like forums, and there was maybe like 3 coaches that you knew about.
Right.
And interesting. Yeah, that's funny. It's because most of the people that get into training now, it's like, I mean, there's a million coaches.
They're everywhere. And, you know, I have my degree in sports science, my bachelor's degree is in sports science. And so that you kind of just fall into the commercial gym industry, I think, after you graduate with something like that. But I'd really come to love the nutrition side of things. And since I've gotten, several other certifications, my precision nutrition certification, certified sports nutritionist, strength and conditioning, all that happy stuff. But, I kind of just fell into the commercial gym side of it, and I hated it. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I have to do this for the rest of my life, I'm screwed.
Right.
And now I'm actually like so disgruntled with the lack of quality, in online training. I mean, there's several like really, it's like the coaches are really good or they're really crappy. It's like you either have these like Instagram coaches who are, charging like $25 for a diet and they have no freaking clue what they're doing, or you have really solid coaches with something valuable to offer people. There's like nothing in the middle.
Yeah, you're right. It is. There's very little middle ground, and it's not just that, but it's kind of difficult to get started now. Like I have, and Joe does as well, a couple guys that we do some like mentoring with, and I'm always honest. I'm like, look, you need to know what you're getting yourself into, because you're a little fish in a big pond here, and in order to, it's not even so much if you're good. You have to be good for a really long time to get noticed at this point.
Yeah.
Well, and unfortunately, I think it's fallen into this situation of not even who's a better coach, but who's better at marketing, who's better at getting more followers. You can say it's not about followers, it's not about likes, but at the end of the day, some of it is, because if you can be putting out the most high quality, top-notch information, and if you're not reaching the appropriate audience volume, you're not going to generate an income for yourself. And quite frankly, I mean, if I was starting out now, and I actually gave a talk at my alma mater, at the college I went to, about working online and personal training online, and I would never do it now starting out if I hadn't already done it 12 years ago, because when I did it so long ago, the market was so new and so fresh. And now there's so much, everybody's doing it, that it makes it 50 times harder to assert yourself or to stand out or to generate enough of an income that you can actually live off of it, right? Because we have bills too. So.
No, I get it. And there's definitely something to be said about that. I probably wouldn't have started where I am now. It's like a lot of people have this grand idea of, I'm just going to quit my job and coach. Like you got another coming. And the marketing thing, do you listen to the other podcasts that I do as well? The Mind Body broadcasts?
No, I do not.
We just did a whole entire episode on marketing, and we talk about probably all the same stuff that you see on a regular basis. It's a blessing and a curse because you definitely have to do it, but there's a lot of people that get taken advantage of as well. So
yeah, and for those of us, or at least for me, I guess I should say, I actually started coaching because I love to coach. I love to help people. That was really the basis of it. And it doesn't even have to do with athletes, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but the vast majority of my clientele are actually not physique athletes. They're just average people. And I love just helping people move better, live better, eat better, feel better, look better, whatever it is. And I feel so many people now just want to do online coaching because they just want to work from home, because they want all the time in the world to train. There's not a vested interest. They're good at marketing. It's like, so for me, the marketing thing, although I realize it's necessary, to me, it's just a distraction from coaching, which is what I actually want to spend my time doing. Like, I'd rather be spending my time coaching than figuring out how to generate likes on my Instagram posts. So
yeah. You shouldn't have to, like, I feel like some people spend more time on Facebook than they do answering emails and programming.
Oh my God, I agree.
Yeah. Anyhow, let's not go down that wormhole.
I was going to say, we could do a whole episode on that one.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, so let's not go down that wormhole today, but maybe for a future episode. But anyhow, let's go back to the contest prep topic that you and I were talking about briefly before we started. I like what you mentioned about, because everyone has this idea now of the longer the prep, the better. And I think that there's absolutely situations where a longer prep is beneficial, and there's situations where it's really not, and it's probably going to do more harm than good. And you were talking about situations where you would actually use a shorter prep and how that would be beneficial. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that a little bit? Situations you may use, let's say you may even use that traditional 12-week prep, or maybe 16 weeks maximum, not 24, not 30. Could you go into that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, so the first thing with prep, like the rule of thumb I always come back to is let go of the notion that it has to be something or it has to look like something, right? So like a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, it's 12 weeks out from a show. Should I start prep? Well, what makes you think that you need 12 weeks? Maybe you need 24, maybe you need 5. Like, I think the very first thing people have to think about when they're thinking about a prep is like, stop thinking that it has to fit into this neat little box of what you think a prep needs to be. Start looking at where you are and what needs to occur for you to get where you want to be. So for somebody who has a lot of weight to lose, like if I have somebody who is 15, 20, 25 pounds over their contest weight, generally the best thing to do is a longer prep and a slower prep. It allows you to lose, like 1 to 2 pounds a week. You're going to minimize any muscle loss. But then some people have 5 pounds, 7 pounds, maybe 10 pounds at the most that they have to lose. And then it becomes more of a question of how fast can we lose that weight, and what is the psychology of the athlete? Because some people can't psychologically get into really long, drawn-out preps. And then other people, on the flip side, don't have the lifestyle or don't have the mindset to do anything really hardcore or extreme, even if it is only for a brief period of time. So I think you have to take the psychology of the athlete into consideration as well. And using myself as an example, I'm the kind of person who needs prep to hurt at a certain point. I need it to feel like shit. pardon my French, in order for me to get mentally into it. So really long preps for me are just hellacious. I feel like I'm just treading water going nowhere. I would rather diet really hard for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and get the weight off that way than diet for like 12, 16, 24 weeks. So I do think that there is a psychological component involved as well. But really, when you look at prep, what you're trying to do is minimize the loss of any muscle tissue and maximize fat loss. And the two ways that I feel most effectively accomplish that are either long and slow or fast and hard. Because if you hit it and quit it and you diet really hard, really fast, one, you're not spending an excessive amount of time in a very low caloric deficit. So in terms of metabolic health, that usually ends up being more beneficial. And two, by the time your body starts catching on and, you know, making all these kinds of adjustments to your metabolism, you know, maybe like downregulating your thyroid, you know, slowing your caloric expenditure, things like that, you're probably almost done with the diet or done with the diet and coming back up out of the deficit. So you kind of avoid that whole negative metabolic adaptation process. So that's a little bit of my theory on that.
And how would that relate to, because we want to talk more female specifically, and I think that actually ties into female preps a little bit more than people might realize, because if I have a guy that weighs 250 pounds and he has 40 pounds to lose, like we might not want to do that in 12 weeks. You know, a male, right? Like in someone in your situation, you're already established as a professional in your category. It's like, well, how much weight do you actually need to gain in the off season? Are you looking to put on massive amounts of tissue? Probably. I mean, maybe you are, but I would imagine that at a point, especially like in bikini, for example. I mean, I have girls that they don't want to move out of bikini. They do very well in the class, but they can't put on any more muscle. So why do they need to get 25 pounds over stage weight? And why would we want to do a 30-week prep?
Well, and that's a whole nother topic that I get a little soapboxy on. And there was an article done a while back, and I know I have shared it 1,000,001 times because it is just, to me, it's biblical. It was from John Meadows, and it was called The Myth of Dirty Bulking. And he talks very explicitly about the dangers of gaining too much weight, and how you will reach a point in weight gain, and this is for men or for women, where your body is putting on fat and weight more than it's putting on muscle, right? The rate of adipose tissue accumulation is happening faster and far surpassing your body's genetic ability to put on muscle. And this is especially true if you're a natural athlete, because natural athletes don't take, performance enhancing drugs. So we aren't able to bypass the body's natural self-limiting, growth mechanisms, right? We can only synthesize so much protein so quickly because we don't have the assistance of drugs. Right. So for most athletes, I don't even see why you would have to be 25, 40 pounds over contest weight. You're just slapping fat on, and you're going to make it that much harder on yourself when you prep. And you mentioned, bikini athletes and figure athletes, and I'm a figure athlete, and, most women don't like gaining 15 to 20 and 25 pounds. Now, granted, it's different, and everybody's body is different, but, one of the biggest struggles for women following a contest is the weight gain, right? It's just seeing the numbers on the scale go up, because we're, even more so than men, we're very tied to having to be a certain weight, and we struggle a lot with the scale going up, right? We're more than happy to see it come down. But when it starts going up, even if in your head you want to gain muscle, or you understand that you need to put some weight back on, you understand you need to let your hormones balance, you understand you need to let your cycle come back, it's still hard to see that. So I find a lot of women don't really want to gain more than 10 pounds. And in that event, I just don't think it's always the best thing to do a really long, slow diet. I think you run the risk of elevating cortisol more, particularly in women who tend to be more stress responsive, and cortisol winds up really limiting, you know, your rate of fat loss. It makes your muscle retention harder. And again, it comes down to psychology, but I find that sometimes, you know, if we've got 8 pounds to lose, man, let's just take like 6 to 8 weeks and get it the hell off. Like, let's just hit it really, really hard, get it off, get you back out of the deficit, and go from there.
Worth mentioning there as well is, I think it really accounts for the other side of prep as well. Like, just in the same case that it may not be an optimal situation for you to really have a long drawn out prep, at the other side of your prep, it's also definitely for females not a good idea to have a long drawn out reverse diet either.
Yep.
So yeah, can work. Yeah, but I think that's a pretty much a universal case. Like, I agree with you that there's massive adherence and psychological and experience reasons why you may or may not want to do a rapid or a slower fat loss phase. But at the other end, if you're coming in true contest condition and maybe you have these negative hormonal adaptations, especially for a female, it's always worth getting back to a healthy body fat as fast as possible within a certain amount of reasonable increase. I'm not talking about trashing nutrient partitioning and insulin sensitivity off the bat and just getting fat. At the same time, allowing yourself to sit around that low body fat post-contest and just adding 3 carbs and 1 fat per week for 20 weeks, you're just dieting for another 20 weeks at that point, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and not disagree with you, but I do want to mention, and I've had like several, disputes with coaches of this, that this whole rate of how fast you need to get to a weight. And I don't even like to set a weight goal like post contest. I just like to try to bring people's calories up and do so in a way that keeps them psychologically comfortable. And I'll use one woman as an example. I reverse dieted her and her weight came up too fast and she panicked and she just stopped eating her food on her own. Like, she just cut her calories down on her own because I had pushed her calories too fast to the point where she wasn't comfortable. I'd rather slow it down just a hair and keep the comfort level of the athlete in check so that they're remaining, consistent and compliant, then shove calories up to the point where her weight is up beyond where she's comfortable with immediately. Because it takes time for your mind, to recalibrate to new body, feels different in clothes, weight is heavier, I don't see lines, my abs have gone away, things like that. Women just, I'm telling you, we become head cases with it.
Yeah, really, I'll tell you what, there's 3 main components, and it sounds like you probably are on the same page that I'm looking at, especially with a female, because guys, don't get me wrong, I mean, there's guys that definitely have that body image kind of block there as well, but it is more typical with females just because the way our society is. That's just what's ingrained in us. But the 3 components I'm always looking at is health, of course. Like, I need to get them. I don't want to keep them shredded and 0 calories forever. Psychological, and then the third, well, I guess it's just really 2 components: psychology and health. It's like I need to figure out how comfortable are they and where can I balance those 2. And if they are worried about their body image, then I'm going to let them know, hey, we're going to go a little bit slower. I'm going to let you know that you might be hungry a little bit longer. Things aren't going to balance out as quick. You're going to feel hungry when you're still eating food. Ghrelin levels, leptin levels, they're not going to balance out as quickly as they could. But at the same time, you're probably going to like the way you look a little bit better. So I always try to kind of relay that message to them. Hey, this is probably the absolute healthiest way to do it, But
Yep.
I also want you to adhere to the plan, because without adherence, then it's obviously pointless.
Yeah, I was going to say the third would probably be adherence, right? And that can go either way of just binging or just stop eating altogether.
Well, and I think a lot of what happens with your reverse also has to be based on what you do right after the show, right? Because some people get off stage and they're already in the food before like they've even like, gotten out of their protan. So, you know, if I have an athlete who goes and eats her face off on Saturday night and then continues to do so on Sunday, you know what I mean? And we have this like binge, I may initially pull calories back down and allow that binge to like shake itself out so that she doesn't feel so like puffy, water retentive, sodium laden. On the flip side, if I have somebody who exercises some semblance of control after the show, you know, one thing I really like to do is take a good couple of days, maybe even a week, and yank their calories up to, you know, by at least like 30-40%, getting them at least like halfway to maintenance, and have them eat there for a week. And then maybe we can pull back down a little bit and then start a reverse from there. But even if you do something like that and you just get them up in calories for a couple of days in a row, if you have somebody who can be consistent and compliant, it alleviates a lot of that stress, and it alleviates a lot of the physical stress. Cortisol levels come down, they start to feel a little better, it settles their hunger hormones, things start to even out a little bit, and then I feel like we can even have a more successful reverse diet than if I just start, you know, a lot of people will start their reverse diet right after the show, and they take their calories back down and then start to like baby add like 20 calories in here or there, and I'm like, oh my God, you're just back on your diet.
Yeah, that's crazy. The thing with the binging thing as well is like it's easy to discount how much of that can just straight be added as body fat. Well, it's quite easy to go out and binge 10,000 calories over 2 days, but then map that out over the course of a whole week, how many calories you've eaten for a whole week. Even if you go back on your previous diet of a 200 to 500 daily calorie deficit, you've still way beyond wiped that out and added a ton more, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, you're exactly right. And then that always cracks me up when people are like, I'm up 15 pounds since my show 2 weeks ago. Gains, baby. And I'm like, yeah, fat gain.
Yeah. Well, and you have other people too that will say, oh, it's just 2 days. You can't gain that much fat in 2 days. I'm like, bullshit. Especially take a 110-pound female that was eating, 1,000 calories maybe come showtime. Tell me that they can't gain several pounds of fat in the first week, first few days, easy. I mean,
look at the overfeeding studies. Like, you just write off the thermic effect of the additional food, and then we have an unlimited propensity to actually gain new fat tissue, even in a single day.
Yeah.
Well, because people forget that or not forget, but a lot of people don't know or aren't aware that like when you lose fat, like you don't actually just lose fat cells, right? Your fat cells shrink.
Yeah.
So the ability to expand and refill is still there, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you start shuttling the food back in at a rate beyond what your metabolism can efficiently handle, because everybody's got a limit, and when you've spent, and again, it depends on how much time you've prepped, but let's say you've spent a long time in a caloric deficit, your body is primed to just soak it up and re-expand those fat cells, fill those suckers up, and it happens so much faster than people think. And what makes it even worse is that it happens so fast, and then what a lot of people do is they're like, oh my God, I ate my face off for a week after the show. And then at least what most women do is they cut their calories way back down, right? Which is just like hammering a nail in the coffin, because your body's not prepared to go back down in a deficit. So they try cutting their calories and the weight doesn't come off. So they cut them even harder. And all of a sudden we've got like metabolic mayhem going on because they're trying to shove their body back down into a contest prep when it's completely not in a state to handle that kind of deficit again.
Yeah. And same on the other end as well. Like we were talking about it a little bit on the last podcast on fat and fluid gain, and talking about the fluid gain post-competition, and maybe why not to just shit yourself when you do gain a bit of weight. But it's obviously very different in women because their capacity for like intra and extracellular fluid storage, blood volume and stuff is a lot less than a man. But inevitably there's going to have to be some, if your goal is to get to a surplus, you know, increase calories or particularly carbohydrates is going to hold a greater amount of fluid. So on the flip side as well, don't be scared of like adding any.
A long way to just explain that, particularly to women, just take the time as a coach and say, look, the scale is going to go up, and initially, unless you're eating, you know, unless you're binging and you're eating way beyond what you're supposed to, initially we're talking about it's just going to be non-tissue related weight gain. It's going to be stored glycogen. It's going to be an increase in stomach volume because you're eating more food. You know, if your food types have shifted a little bit, or we're not, you know, measuring, monitoring, restricting sodium, there's probably going to be some sodium. You know, your fluid levels are going to be like balancing themselves out. That's what it is. If you're eating yourself up 3 or 4 pounds in the first couple of days, don't hit the panic button. You know, it's you didn't gain muscle in 3 or 4 days. And as long as you weren't off the rails binging, you sure as hell didn't gain fat. So it's just your body balancing itself out. You know, I feel like I really have to take the time as a coach and talk to the women that I work with and work them through it mentally so that they don't freak out.
Yeah, you have to make it make sense depending on the person's understanding of the mechanisms. Like some people, they get it, they understand how the mechanisms work. Maybe they're a coach themselves or something, you know, but
right.
But others just don't. So I mean, one way that I like to break it down too is if you think about in talking about like the potential for post-show fat gain, because I don't want to, like I said, I want to balance the psychology and the adherence and the health, but I also want to let them know that, hey, if you get too comfortable and go off the rails too much, you will gain fat. You know, think about it. It's like if you think about it logically, and I'll tell them, okay, we had you eat extra carbohydrates, maybe extra fats before the show because we want your glycogen stores to be full, so you have a better look on stage, at least to whatever extent that they need. Maybe we want your intramuscular triglycerides to be a little bit fuller. So I'm saying if you're pretty much filled up by Saturday night, everything beyond, like you can only store so much glycogen at that point. So now I'm like, that is going to go somewhere. Next best place is going to be in the adipose tissue. Those fat cells are ready to uptake that food. So don't think that you can't gain fat. And I just want them, I just try to like, I don't want to scare them. I don't want them to have like some horrible, you know, like some horrible food relationship. But at the same time, like I want them to understand at least like basic mechanisms. So when they do go out to eat after the show or whatever, that they're conscious of what's going on and they're not listening to their friend that is trying to, you know, give them a box of donuts backstage, you know? So it's like, there has to be, I feel like if people do understand some of the physiology of it, that they maybe are a little less likely to go off the rails. I mean, it does, I know it sounds on paper, that sounds good, but I like to think that that does help some.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So let's talk about, so how about a longer prep? So let's talk about somebody that maybe that does have more fat to lose. Maybe it's their first prep.
Yeah,
they have
newbies.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. Maybe they have 20 pounds or even a little bit more to lose. If we were doing a longer prep, and I kind of know the answer to this since we already mentioned it before the show, but where would you run them a straight deficit for 20 plus weeks, 24, 30 weeks? Or how would you add, you know, reset or diet break periods in there? How would you go about that typically?
So, you know, it all depends on the context.
Sure.
All depends on the client. Obviously, I mean, I would say that more than likely I would not run a straight deficit, but I will also say that prep is prep. And that means that you're trying to achieve an extreme level of conditioning that is never healthy. And in doing so, you have to do some unhealthy things. So there have been times where I have cut a client's calories lower than I would have liked to cut them. I have made them do cardio more than I would like to have them do cardio. You know, I try to avoid those things if at all possible, but you know, sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get somebody in shape, particularly if their body's stubborn. And in terms of diet break, you know, diet breaks, refeeds, cheat meals, you know, I evaluate all of that on a case-by-case basis. Again, based a lot on what I know of the client and the psychology of the client, right? Some clients, a cheat meal turns into a binge. A cheat meal would turn into a cheat day. They just don't lack, or excuse me, they lack the control or the discipline or however you want to put it to be able to execute something like go have a burger and fries and stick to just that. So I often won't use cheat meals. That's not really my favorite or go-to method preferred. I will usually do like a carb up if carbs have been low, you know, maybe a refeed or maybe just a caloric increase for a couple of days where I get them back up closer to maintenance. I'd rather do something like that and work to keep them in a positive mental space than just tell somebody to go have a cheat meal.
Oh yeah, well I'm absolutely agree with that. Plus, we know now, at least from most of the studies and stuff on actual refeeding, because there's been some good researchers in our industry that have done this research, is cheat meal, like a single cheat meal doesn't really do shit for your metabolism anyhow.
Right.
So, and I still see people talk about it like it does, when in reality, I'm always really hesitant. Don't get me wrong, like there has been instances where I've added free meals to prep, but it's not because I think it's going to be some metabolic magic. But typically, yeah, it's like some kind of refeed structure is probably going to be more lucrative. And for some people that may include like a meal that isn't cooked by them, you know, that is at a restaurant or something. And for other people, you just don't even go there because you know what that'll turn into.
Yeah, so, and I find that that's particularly true of people who have struggled with eating in the past. Like if I work with women who've struggled with binge eating, or women who were really overweight, or who come from a background of overeating or having, you know, poor food. It all just depends. But for a lot of people, I just find the risk you run does more harm than good. I would rather keep them steered towards cleaner, more nutrient-dense foods. I hate the term clean, but, you know, at the end of the day, that's kind of what I'm saying, you know, less processed, you know, less sugar, that kind of stuff. Keep them towards more along the lines of the foods that they might currently be eating on their diet, and just increasing calories, increasing carbs is what I usually try to go to, because when you increase carbs, again, it comes down to the alleviation on the elevated cortisol that happens in the body. Low carb diets statistically have been shown to increase cortisol levels, particularly in women whose bodies tend to be much more sensitive to caloric deficits than men's. So mitigating that cortisol response, particularly in a natural athlete, somebody who's not using drugs, is extremely important. And so I'll often bring carbs up versus even just bringing calories up to help alleviate any negative cortisol response that I've elicited in the body by putting the client on a deficit.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you there. I couldn't honestly tell you the last time that I used a free meal or a cheat meal, or even like an overfeeding day in a client, especially not a natural client. If the client's enhanced, we can modulate some of those negative adaptions with like exogenous thyroid, for example. Right. But especially with a natural athlete, everything will always be a 2-day, usually back-to-back refeed if they're exhibiting signs of any negative hormonal adaptation to offset the adaptation. It doesn't remove the adaptation, as we know from the literature that you mentioned, Austin, but to somewhat offset those adaptations. Yeah, it's always been like a 48-hour or more. If we're further ahead, you can do those weeks, as you say. But yeah, free meals have absolutely no physiological benefit in a prep. Psychologically, yeah, great. And if you're far enough ahead, you could include them. But I can't really see a case for that. I'd rather the client just run a measured higher amount over a longer period of time, since we are talking competitive physique athletes here, not just having a nice meal that you like, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's important, and I think it's good that we're even mentioning it, because a lot of times I notice there's no attention paid to, is the athlete natural or not, right? Because it makes a huge difference. And unfortunately, I think a lot of even natural athletes come to the table and they've seen on Instagram, bodybuilders posting about their epic cheat meals and, oh, I'm having 2 pizzas and a vat of ice cream like 4 weeks out of my prep. And well, if they're an enhanced lifter, it's a completely different landscape. You're dealing with a whole different animal than you are if you're natural. And I think it's good that, I'm not saying one is better or worse. I'm saying you can't treat the two the same. And I think it's important that coaches address that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If you're using drugs that are kicking up your BMR a ton, then you can get away with a bit more. Absolutely. I think a lot of coaches use it as a marketing tool as well. That's something you mentioned the other day, Austin, where you'd see, like, they'll post a picture of a client and they'll say, look, don't tell me you need to do 2 hours of cardio. Don't tell me you need to eat less than 2,000 calories. This girl got here with a weekly cheat meal and no cardio. And it's like, well, yeah, great, but you're not her. And, you know.
Natural lifters, we need to do cardio.
Honestly, I prep tons of enhanced people and tons of natural people. I don't care. Like, it's not as magic as people think. Like, because anabolics in general really they're not increasing your metabolic rate. Yeah, there's other fat burners, there's other thermogenics and exogenous thyroid and things, but in all honesty, you would be hard pressed to find even enhanced lifters that are getting really, really peeled that aren't hurting pretty bad in prep.
It all feels the same. It all feels the same.
Yeah, and it's just there are certainly differences, and there's certainly advantages to some of the PEDs, but yeah, this whole idea of prep's going to be way easier if you use PEDs is like complete crock of shit. That's because I've prepped both, but another thing that I wanted to touch on was kind of this, and Joe mentioned it right there, was this kind of fear mongering of, oh my gosh, if I go below X amount of calories or do this much cardio, then either I'm going to be permanently damaged or my coach must not know what they're doing because so-and-so on Instagram.
That's the trend right now.
What's that?
Because that's the trend right now, I think. The industry, the fitness industry is a trend industry, right? So like years ago, because I've been around this for way too long now, you weren't cool if you weren't like eating nothing but boiled chicken and distilled water and doing 2 hours of cardio a day. Now you're not cool unless you're having epic refeeds or epic cheat meals, doing no cardio and eating like 1,800 calories a day.
Yeah, and do you notice the correlation with people nowadays not nearly in as good condition show for show than it used to be?
Right? Ironic, huh? But yeah, that's just, and I don't want to say that it's not dangerous to undereat for a period of time or anything like that, but I also think it's important for people to remember that the body is so resilient. I mean, you're not going to have some kind of broken metabolism because you dieted really hard for a couple of weeks. That whole notion like drives me nuts. The metabolism doesn't break. It shifts, it adjusts, it adapts, it slows down, it speeds up. It doesn't break. This notion that like you're going to somehow hurt yourself to the point where you are like totally beyond repair is just, it's a fallacy. It's just a false mind.
Well, I mean, you adapt you adapt back upwards just like you adapt downwards, you know,
exactly. Yep.
metabolically. And not only that, but like you said, it's normally an acute situation. It's not like, yeah, I mean, if let's say I'm just using a generic number. Let's say it is a 16-week prep. Yeah, I mean, if you're eating sub 1,000 calories and doing 2 cardio sessions a day for 16 weeks straight, like like that, your coach probably doesn't know what they're doing. With that said, if you're doing that at some point in your prep, that doesn't, like, I don't even bat an eye. I mean, I will say though, like if I do get to a point where I know that I can pull someone out of it at the end, but it's going to take a very strategic post-show period, I always reiterate to the client, I need you to at least stay on. If you don't plan on, you know, or financially or whatever, you don't plan on sticking with me for the whole off season, I'd like it if you could at least stick with me for a couple months. We are going to have to get pretty aggressive at the end of prep. I want you to know that if you do want to get into true shape, there are going to be some pretty rough metabolic adaptations you're going to have to work through at the end of the prep. As long as you're cool with that, we'll keep going. I have no problem keeping going. These are your goals. I don't think that you're going to be permanently damaged, but I'm letting you know, hey, we're taking you down to 950 calories, and you're going to be doing a lot of cardio, but we can definitely pull you out of it. It's just that I don't think that enough coaches, when they do take people to these extremes, I don't think they kind of relay that facts to their clients of how important it is going to be post-show. It's going to be a lot more tedious period for someone that has to go to those extremes than someone that only goes down to, 2,000 calories in the prep. I mean, their post-show periods are going to be entirely different in terms of how their body responds.
I seriously, I could not agree with you more, Austin. Like, I could hug you through the computer right now, because one of my biggest pet peeves is coaches leaving their athletes high and dry, like the day of when the show is done, it's just done, and there's absolutely no attention paid to post-show care. And what you do after the show is just as important, if not more so, than leading into the show, because not only does it help you recover from what you've just done, but it also helps sets you up for a productive off season, whatever that looks like for you. And the situation that you kind of just mentioned, I literally had verbatim a circumstance where I was prepping a bikini girl last year, and her calories were getting lower and lower and lower and lower, and her body was responding, but I mean, it was barely responding, right? She was like real stubborn. And I told, she really was adamant on going through with the show. I tried to have a discussion with her about potentially not doing it. She really wanted to do it. And I said, look, if you do this, this is what has to happen afterwards.
Yeah.
You need to take, and all of my contest prep programs, like if somebody purchases a contest prep with me, it includes the first 2 weeks post show. So I at least, even if they don't want to get continued coaching with me for whatever reason, I can at least get them set up on a reverse diet and explain to them how to continue with it on their own moving forward. So at least I feel like I haven't just left them hang. We have some kind of post-show, plan in place. Most of my clients hit the stage with a reverse diet or some kind of post-show nutritional strategy in hand, so they know what they're to do on Sunday. They know what they're to do on Monday, on the days following the show, because it's so incredibly important. And I think, explaining to people that, if you're going to compromise your body like this and put your body through this rigorous prep, you also have to be prepared to do what's necessary after the show to remedy that.
Yep, totally agree with that. Nothing more for me to say on that. I agree with you two completely.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I mean, I know both of you have run into this situation. How many times have you gotten a new client inquiry, off-season inquiry, maybe they're 2 or 3 months post-show, they look like they've put on twice the amount of body fat that they started their previous prep with, and they just had no plan. They had a rough prep, they had no guidance afterwards, they thought that they would be okay. And I mean, you know how it goes. It's like with the fat gain post show, it's once your glycogen fills up, once your triglyceride stores fills up, it literally looks like you get fat overnight. I mean, and it happens.
Yep.
It happens real quick.
You see it on Instagram where you'll see post show a selfie for like 5 days every morning, filling up and then stops dead when they wake up and realize that they've spilled over that store completely, and now they've just gained pure body fat because they're so primed to do so. And then it's such a shame because it's wasting off season the time that you need to be progressing for your next show. You're just dieting again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember too that everybody puts weight on differently, and everybody gains weight at different rates. And some people they pack it on a lot faster. That's all there is to it. They really have to be careful. They have to be strategic. They have to be disciplined because they just have genetics, that cause them to pack weight on a lot quicker than other people. Some people stay leaner off season than others. That there's genetic variance as well.
Yeah, I think as a general rule, it's a good idea not to just like chase this mythical anabolic rebound because it just flat out doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah. If only.
Yeah.
If only food came with like road signs, like go to the shoulders, go to the glutes, bypass the love handles, but it doesn't. So.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on as far as prep or post-show periods? Because that's kind of what we've been chatting about. I don't want to miss anything.
A good one cool would be like hormonal biomarkers and blood work for females specifically, but something's telling me we should do an episode on that itself because that can be extremely long, but I think that's quite important.
Trying to convince people to even do blood work is hard as heck anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And which is shocking to me because I know both, because Joe's in the UK, you guys have Medichecks there, and then here we have not only could you, you could potentially go to your doctor. Sometimes that's a waste of breath, but we can order in almost all 50 states, except for I think 3 states, you can order your own blood work anyhow. So you could literally get anything done.
People want to pay for it.
Well, and it's like, oh, you won't pay $150 for comprehensive blood work to check your health, but you're going to spend it on all this other bullshit. So
just don't take your pre-workout for a couple of months.
I don't disagree with you, but I at least know personally, the athletes that I've had that I've mentioned they should probably get their blood work done. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Jeff, because that's a really important part of the process, especially if you are not somebody who just, maybe does one show. If you're a repeat competitive athlete, it's going to become an expense that, in my opinion, you just need to build in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that a little bit. So talk about, because I see that a lot more in females than males. I think every local scene has that, those competitors that they do every single show, but they're just never in shape. So I'm not really going to count them because they don't have any metabolic adaptions because they're still fat. But we'll talk about the show hoppers. So I tend to see it a lot more with females, the gals that they do 6-8 shows a year. And we're not talking like back to back, they're spread out. So they're literally never having a break. Do you see that very often?
Yeah, and I did that myself when I was younger. I guess they say hindsight's always 20/20, but a lot of what I know now also comes from, unfortunately, having gone through the personal experience of doing it the wrong way when I was younger. And I never did 6-8 shows in a year, but it was nothing for me to do 4 or 5, anything like that, and just compete for the whole year. And there are extreme ramifications to that, and it's not healthy and it's not beneficial, and I never, ever, ever, ever advise it. So, and even if you do back-to-back shows, I still don't advise you do a ton of them. I don't, because it's still time you have to spend in a caloric deficit.
Yeah. And that's a recipe for long-term hormonal negative adaptions, even
No,
you know, even in women. Well, I mean, we speak about it all the time, especially with the new case studies that are coming out on contest prep in men that have been really useful for natural athletes in terms of looking at the rates of hypergonadism specifically. But I mean, how many natural women have you seen with long-term amenorrhea and things like that they can't ever get back from doing these elongated periods at true contest lean body fat, depending on the category, of course, how lean
a lot of women will think, oh, you know, my period went away and it'll come back. And, you know, yes, this is true. And I do remind women that, you know, loss of your period, while not considered normal or healthy, it is the body's way of just ceasing to divert calories and effort into, you know, the production of ovaries and things like that when it realizes that you're not capable of sustaining a pregnancy. Mm-hmm. It's a natural response in your body. It happens when you get too lean, and it's nothing to like panic over if it comes back. But the problem is women will think, you know, if it went away, it's not that big of a deal, and they'll leave it go. And if you leave it go for too long, it'll never come back. And then we're talking about a major issue. You can literally kick yourself into perimenopause by not taking care of yourself and not allowing your hormones to balance. And when I say allowing your hormones to balance, for women, that means your body fat has to come up, because that's what creates hormonal normalization for women.
I mean, I'm sure you've both seen it. How many girls have you had come to you after doing this with like androgen deficiencies?
Yeah, or estrogen, or, you know, off levels of estrogen, or downregulated thyroid, thyroid. I've had women who have actually, you know, they experience symptoms that are identical to that of somebody who has hypothyroidism, but they don't have hypothyroidism.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I had, because we talked about how resilient the body is too, and it isn't completely bulletproof though. Like if you do abuse it long enough, in extreme cases, I have had people that, I have had females that come to me that are hormonally downregulated, not only testosterone, but estrogen and progesterone cycling was completely out of whack. And I worked with them. I mean, kept them above maintenance. We did everything. We backed off training, reduced stress, managed cortisol. I had comprehensive blood work. I mean, and they just didn't bounce back. But I know that that's kind of an extreme case. I mean, they have really abused their body for long periods of time. But yeah, I mean, it can definitely happen. And even if it's not permanent, I mean, it can take, I know some of the case studies that they did on natural bodybuilders, and these were on males. I think it was all males. They were saying that it was taking something like 6 months just for all of the biomarkers to come back normal. And you can imagine that's probably going to be longer in a female, which is, and that's a long time, 6 months. I mean, a lot of people, if they're doing a show every single year, they're prepping for X amount of weeks, and then their off season isn't a year. It's only half of a year because they're starting prep again. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it takes a lot longer than people realize.
No, I agree.
I don't really have much more on the contest side of things. What about briefly touch on hypertrophy in females, as far as just what would you find realistic for a female? Like, what kind of goals do you set for females? And what kind of things just psychologically do you do to help them? Because I think that in a natural female, the process of actually gaining muscle can be so brutally slow that it's mentally really hard for them, because it's not like fat loss where you can see it in a photo, in a week's time or 2 weeks time, and you can say, oh yeah, something's happening. And in a female that's natural, I mean, you might have to do a year side-by-side comparison for them to be able to see anything. And that's just really hard for people mentally.
Yeah, and again, I think it comes down to explaining that. really explaining that to them, particularly, again, you have to look at all the factors that contribute to muscle growth, right? So it's not even just being a female, it's, how old is she? Again, somebody like me who's 34 is going to grow muscle at a completely different rate than somebody who's 20. How long has she been lifting? Because your training age counts a great deal, right? We all know that you make amazing gains the first year or two that you've been training. But again, using myself as an example, I've been lifting since I was 18 years old. So we're talking a whole nother landscape of muscle growth. So I think explaining to women about what's realistic, and then again, making sure that they're doing all of the right things training wise and diet wise, and explaining to them the importance. That's why I don't like to use the term off season. I like to use the term growth season more, because we're not off, right? We're just doing different things with different goals. But explaining to them that if muscle growth is the focus, then we have to make sure that strategically we're doing all of the things necessary to optimize, an anabolic environment in the body.
Yeah, I hate it sometimes. Sometimes I feel like a downer, because part of me, I think, and this is another marketing thing, is getting
quiet, I'm on a podcast.
And motivated and hyped up, and kind of instilling something in their head that might be unrealistic, but that keeps them excited and motivated. Where I'm the guy that's like, well, this is really slow. It's probably going to be boring at times. It's going to be, you're going to have to be really consistent. You might not always be motivated. And they're like, that all sounds kind of hard. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you got to really, it's like, you got to want to do it. I mean, gaining muscle, like how many females outside of the first couple years of training, if you could name the number of females that have been training, like, competing 14 years like yourself, that have actually continued to progress past that 2 or 3 year mark. There's not that many, because they're not consistent enough. They don't do things correctly, in terms of maybe they don't progressively overload when they lift. Maybe they undereat.Maybe they don't have enough time in the caloric surplus or whatever. But I'm always very impressed when I see, especially a natural female athlete that has the least potential for muscle gain, next to a natural male or an enhanced athlete. If they've actually made substantial, or just continued to progress in some way for 5, 10, 15 years, that's always really impressive to me, because I know that person has done their homework, monitored progress, managed all the variables for a really long time. And that takes a ton of effort. It takes a ton of patience. And that's always impressive to me.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's really the rationale or the logic that I try and put into clients, like a natural female that is an advanced trainee, for example. Let's say they've been lifting consistently for more than 4 years. Their propensity to gain actual skeletal muscle tissue is what? At the very most, under optimal conditions, 1 to 2 pounds a year of absolute muscle tissue? So the way to look at it is not it's a waste of time even trying. It's more not many people could even do this, and this is the reason why you need to be absolutely on more than anyone, because you've got the least going in your favor for adding new tissue, especially as a competitor. So use that as your motivation and your logic for doing everything in your power to add that new tissue weight,
And reminding them that change, especially since we're talking about physique athletes, we're talking about a sport of aesthetics. So we're talking about creating a look. And there's a lot to be said for muscle maturity and muscle density. And those are all things that can continue to shift as you age. Even if you aren't actually adding muscle tissue, those types of things will create a difference in how you look when you're on stage. And I think it's important to kind of hammer that home as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep, I would agree. Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to add. Is there anything specific that's on your mind that you want to touch on? Feel free to use this as a platform. I know that I always I always get a nice laugh out of your post because you post a lot like me, like semi-angrily sometimes because
We're
you're
passive aggressive.
No, well, right. It's passive, like you're not calling people out or anything like that, but you're definitely passionate about a topic. And I always post kind of a similar way. So is there
I've got to
anything
say,
else?
Austin, your posts of the more aggressive nature are becoming a bit more frequent recently. So I'm guessing that's the prep that's pushing you to.
Yeah, the one that I posted the other day was about as aggressive as I get, but I actually got
causes like a severe lack of patience. So it's just all of a sudden the filter that you normally have just kind of goes away and you just kind of unleash.
Yeah.
Yup. I'm not going to disagree.
I like that one though. I thought that was spot on.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely relevant.
I always like it when we're talking about something and then later that day you post about it.
Well, I do that a lot. It's always just stuff that I notice, and you can tell the people that post like that too. I think, Allison, your posts are kind of like that too. I mean, I always, if I see something, a trend that I notice or something, I'm like, this is just bogus or crap. Instead of commenting on that person's thread because I don't really like that type of confrontation, I'll just make a post about it instead.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Plus, like, everybody's a keyboard warrior and wants to, like, you post something or you see something that upsets you and all of a sudden it turns into like who's got the more condensed PubMed study instead of like, anything else. So I usually just sit back and write a post about it. Plus, it allows me to clear my thoughts and write something coherent instead of just ranting, which is not productive to anyone or anything. So
yeah, and in all reality, posting about it is going to reach a better audience. It's going to make you sound more mature and more educated than starting an argument on somebody's thread, because that's going to solve nothing. Nobody else is going to see it besides who's on the thread. You've helped nobody and you look like a jackass.
Exactly.
So basically, yeah, I'm totally with you. Throw your thoughts out there on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and definitely those kinds of posts though, they help a ton of people. They really do. I think even though the likes and the comments don't always reflect how many people they do, because I don't know about you, but I get random messages where it's like, man, I really liked this post. I'm like, I have no idea who you are. We're not even friends or whatever. And so that's always cool to me that it reaches people like that.
No, I agree, and I do. I get messages that are similar, and I think a lot of that too stems down to being passionate about what you do and genuinely caring about conveying the proper information and helping people make decisions based on that information. I think a lot of coaches now, again, it's trend, but it's a societal trend, for God's sakes, to just like say whatever you think and to just rant and to just like blow your mouth off and run your mouth and not really think twice. And I think there's something to be said for people that take the time to post passionately and from a place of caring, and they're trying to convey good information. And even though there is a touch of like tough love and, I don't want to say anger, but you're disgruntled with something that you read, or you're frustrated with a fallacy that's floating around, you're still attacking it from, I'm passionate about correcting this mindset because I care so much about giving people the right information and combating the wrong information.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just the way you approach things. I mean, you're delivering it in a way that, like I said, you sound more mature, you sound more educated, it helps more people. You're not getting in an argument, whatever. It's just, I don't even have time for that stuff. Half the time, I see posts all the time that I don't agree with, or that I know that I could prove wrong or whatever. Half the time I won't even comment, because it literally solves nothing, because nobody ever wins an argument. It never pans out like that. It just never does.
Well, and you can see something you don't like and you can just pass it by. You know, everybody feels the need to like have to address everything that offends or upsets or rubs them the wrong way. And it's like, you're allowed to see something, disagree with it, and keep moving on. You don't have to address it.
I saw somebody post that the other day too. I can't remember who it was, and it was just hilarious. It was like, they were just talking about how they didn't understand why not just unfollow somebody, or why do you pay so much attention, or why do you get so irritated, or whatever. And it's like, I don't get it. It's a lot of mental energy into something that you could put towards something more productive, but that's a different topic, so we won't go into that.
The same reason people watch soaps, because people like getting annoyed at stuff.
Yeah,
I don't, because that shit just stresses me out, and I don't like to be stressed out.
Too much sympathetic drive for you, Austin. Don't want to kill your adrenals again.
You know me. I don't even argue. Like in the group, I might comment, and then I literally will go right up and turn off the notifications, because I just really don't give a shit what anyone else says after that.
Yeah, it's been going on in the group today, hasn't it, about that new testing service. So just don't use it then, if you think it's some conspiracy.
Yeah, I unfollowed the post because there's just people mouthing off bullshit. So I'm just like, whatever. Okay, see you guys. I have stuff to do.
Yeah, you wonder about that, don't you? Like, what are these people doing on a Wednesday?
That's what Allison said too. It's like, it's like some of these coaches too, they sit and argue on Facebook all day. I'm like, what? How
you got the client work to do?
Yeah, I'm like, don't you have something, like, shouldn't you be like working? Don't you have a job? Don't you have a client to take care of? Like, don't like. And
these are the same people that I'll get a client from. They're like, oh yeah, I used to be coached by so and so. They had a shitty response time. They had no detail in their updates. But I'm like, well, why did you work with them in the first place? Well, because they sounded really smart online and on this. I'm like, you do realize that's because they were always online and they weren't paying any attention to their clients. They're just taking your money.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the thing with Facebook messages as well, where someone will send you a message and then they'll send you a thumb and then they'll send you a hello. And you're like, Jesus, it's going to take me at least 24 hours. And the people get offended by it.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I've got clients' emails to get back to. And then they'll post in the group, Austin, how many times have you seen that? Message Joe, but he didn't get back to me, so. And it's like, wow.
Yeah. Oh, well. You can't win them all, man.
No.
Oh, well.
Fighting the good fight. Anyway, guys, I think we covered that really well. That was a really good episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
What are we up to now? You two training today?
Yes.
What are you training?
I got legs today. I got squats.
Oh, yeah. I've got legs tomorrow.
I hate legs. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, I hate legs as well. Well, I don't hate training legs. I just always wish I was training upper body when I'm training legs, because I need more upper body, you know?
I hate training. I hate squats. Like, I hate them. I know why they're there, but it is literally like a good squat session will wipe me on, like, I'll be on my ass for like a day or two.
Yeah.
Like, take it out of me. And so I'm always like, oh my God, I got to squat.
I love squats, and I'm a strong squatter, but they don't really blow up my legs.
Yeah, you know? See, I'm a really strong deadlifter, so I love deadlifting, and I'm not as strong on my squats. So it's kind of like I never feel, that's the thing. Yeah. It's like I feel like I really hit the numbers that I want to, whereas deadlifts, it's, a whole nother, I have a solid bench press, so.
Oh, my bench is awful. Terrible. Well, I'm on a rest day today. I'm going to go and PT my dad, who's just got back into the gym after spinal cord injury. So got him in the gym later doing some stuff. It's his second session. And got some steps to do. Got 8,000 steps to get done.
Get your NEAT levels up there, buddy.
That's it, man. I woke up, this morning 212. Yesterday I was 211. Day before that I was 209. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I maybe won't have to increase calories at all. You may just continually gain weight in a linear fashion for the next 6 months. Wouldn't that be crazy?
Man, I'm going to gain a pound a day until I'm 300 pounds.
Well, we'll see. We could try.
Man, I'd love that. Hold it there for long enough, and then
Yeah, it would turn into something.
it'd be sick.
But well, sounds like you guys have some good stuff coming up. I'm gonna get back to feeling awesome. I always feel really good when I record the podcast. Like my dopamine and
It's
goes
talking
up.
to me,
I feel
man.
good. What's that?
It's talking to me. Trust me.
Yeah.
That's why you were in such a good mood when you were over in the UK, because it's just being around me.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, you're a ball of
A
sunshine.
ray of sunshine.
Yeah. Really.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. I've got a meal to cook. So, Allison, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an honor. I'd love to have you on again. We can talk a little bit more in depth on like something more specific, maybe. In fact, any of our girls listening from inside the OPD group, I'm going to get Allison in there, and so we can connect on Facebook, hopefully. And please shoot over any questions that you have for Allison that you'd like us to cover on a future podcast. That would be really cool. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the interview there between Allison Austin and myself. We haven't had a female-specific episode ever, I don't think, although we did do something with Marty and Jasmine quite a while back before Austin came on the show, but that was when we were quite inconsistent with everything. So I hope all you girls out there enjoyed that, and if you do have any questions, like I say, for myself, Austin, or Allison, then do get them in the group and we can cover them in a future podcast. So I'm going to finish off this podcast with a big shout out to our sponsors. First of all, Mediphorm Site Enhancement. Mediphorm is a hyaluronic acid based site enhancement product. It's pretty much hyaluronic acid suspended in water. May I say pharmaceutical grade hyaluronic acid. Recently, these products are becoming more popular and you're seeing more and more pop up. I will just say be careful where you're getting your hyaluronic acid based products from, because it needs to be pharmaceutical grade firstly. So if it's cheap, look the other way, because raw hyaluronic acid is extremely expensive. And I also wouldn't recommend going for the pure powder hyaluronic acid, because there needs to be some BA suspended in there for antifungal properties, etc. And suspending it in fluid with BA does not make the solution weaker, no matter what you heard. Anyway, www.mediphorm.com for your hyaluronic acid site enhancement products. Also shout out to KOMPAK, your one-stop shop for all your competitive needs, especially for you girls that are listening for this one. Everything that you need for your show is on kompak.store, KOMPAK.store. You can order absolutely everything in one single big box, and it will all come personalized just to you, so you don't need to stress about shopping around. Also shout out to Team Metal Clothing Co. The new website launches this week, so we're going to have that up for you guys next week. Okay, thank you all for listening. As always, keep posting on the group, keep your questions coming in. And literally this morning, I've just confirmed a really exciting guest to come on. I can't wait. You guys are going to love. Just for a hint of who it could be, Gary Thomas in the group specifically is going to go nuts for this guy, and probably Ben Broadhurst as well. So you can maybe read between the lines there. But thank you for listening, guys, and I'll see you next week.